Hello everyone, this is GrindCore with part 6 of the Thin Red Grind. I'll be playing 4 tables of NL 200 in this video, and in the last 2 videos of the series I'll be playing NL 400. I'd like to start this video by reviewing a hand posted on the forums played at NL 400, where a hero turns a mate hand into a bluff on the river. He has King 10 suited and defends against the button steal from a 18-15, really tight regular. Flop check call, pretty standard. Turn goes check check, and on the river villain bets $32 and we check raise. Alright, first poser says that in his eyes it doesn't make a lot of sense. See, whether it makes sense or not, that depends on whether we can represent a strong hand after having check called the flop. Villain will probably value bet a hand like ace jack on the river if we don't lead there. So if villain, we have to ask ourselves what hand is villain gonna call with if we bet. Let's say that we have king queen and we bet the river, or we have pocket fours and we bet the river. What hands are we gonna get called by? If most of those hands are betting when check to anyway, then we might as well go for a check raise. And I think that's probably the case here. Villain might have a weak queen that he checks back for pot control on the turn. If he steals with something like queen 8 suited or something, he might check turn and then bet river. Same for ace jack, king jack. So if he's going to bet those hands anyway when check to, then we might as well go for a value check raise. So the line in itself is credible. Now, can we represent hands that we've played this way? A hand like queen 10, pocket fours. Will villain expect us to check call those on the flop or check raise? The board has a flush draw, so he expects us to raise hands like queen 10 and pocket fours on the flop. Then there are less hands that we can represent for value by check raising on the river. So yeah, ask yourself what you think villain thinks that you're doing. If villain thinks that you could be slow playing strong hands on the flop, you can definitely check raise the river for value. Also, if he thinks you flat hands like ace queen pre-flop and then check call the flop, you can definitely credibly represent a value check raise on the river. If he doesn't think that you can have hands like ace queen, queen 10, pocket fours here, then you're really only representing queen jack and 10 jack, maybe somewhere like 4 or 5 suited, and that's about it. So in that case, it might not be the best idea in the world to check raise. If villain is mass tabling or something and he has no time to really put you on a range, he's just gonna think, oh shit, check raise, fold. Then it's fine to check raise without being able to represent much. But he says that he's a regular and certainly not weak tight, so he's probably not the typical very weak mass tabling nit. Alright, so yeah, I think if you can represent a strong hand here, if according to your image you could credibly flat pocket fours or queen 10 or something on the flop, then the check raise here is good, because there's no reason not to make if you have a strong hand on the river, there's no reason not to go for a check raise. Someone else has a problem with it because flush draws missed. The thing is though, if we have a busted flush draw, wouldn't we just lead the river instead of attempting a check raise? Because if villain's air that's giving up, we could just bet and represent the queen, pretty simple. We probably wouldn't go for a check raise bluff with it. So I don't think the fact that the flush draw miss works in our opponent's favor here. In fact, it might work in our favor, because if our opponent has a flush draw, he might bet the flop and then figure that not much of our flop check calling range is going to be calling on the is going to be folding on the turn, because the jack improved a lot. If we have 10-9, we now have pair plus open ender. If we have king jack, we now have a pair plus open ender. Queen jack made 2 pair. So it's pretty reasonable for villain to check back a flush draw on the turn, and then he probably expects us to bet the river with a hand like queen jack or something. So when we check, we look like we have a weaker bluff catcher, and in that case he might decide to actually bluff with his busted flush draw. So if he has a busted flush draw, it doesn't even matter whether we really represent the hand or not, because he's folding anyway. So the fact that the flush draw works actually, that the flush draw missed actually works in our favor here. Right, this is a pretty straightforward example of turning a hand into a bluff, because you probably don't have the best hand. But there are some situations where you actually very often have the best hand, but it's still better to turn it into a bluff. Good example is you have a pocket pair and you raise from the cutoff, say pocket sixes, and you get called by the big blind, and the board comes ace king deuce. Our opponent checks and we check back, and the turn is a brick, and our opponent checks again. Now it's very likely just giving up with air, because he expects us to have showdown value when we check back the flop, like a weak ace or a king, and he doesn't expect us to fold very often, so it doesn't look like a good spot for him to bluff with air. But yeah, if he has air, if he has two overcards to our pocket sixes, he still has at least 12.5% equity, maybe more if he has a gut shot or something with it. So folding him off those hands is good. And also if he has a hand like pocket sevens or pocket eights, if we check it down we just lose to those. While if we bet turn, he probably just check folds them. And if he has a hand like king 10 or so, and he check calls the turn, if bet again on the river, he can't really call much, because we so credibly rep a weak ace or king queen. So we can even get him off, most of his turn calling raise we can get him off it on the river anyway. The only hands that he can really check call twice with would be top pair ace x on that board. But if he has ace x, if it looks like we have showdown value, why is he checking the turn? If he has ace x, he's betting pretty much 100%. So when he checks twice there, sure, he has all his air in his range that's giving up, likely good 70% of the time, but it's still best to use the hand to double barrel bluff with. And you'll see me get in a spot where I turn a value hand into a bluff, even more extreme than the pocket sixes. Alright. I'm currently playing 4 tables of NL 400. Just set down no reads on anyone, but this guy is probably a regular short stacker, and this guy is probably a fish, so I'm gonna squeeze here because the short stacker will mostly push fold, and will readless probably fold enough to make that profitable, and the fish only called a min raise, so his range is super wide and he will either fold pre-flop or check fold the flop a lot when he does call. That was just such a good spot to squeeze that my hand didn't really matter, so I did it with any 2 cards. Here I can both call and 3-bet. The first 3-bet of the session usually gets more credit, so I'll just flat here. If it was a weaker hand I would be 3-betting. An ace queen or so would probably also 3-bet for value. Ace jack, king queen, flats. Not the greatest board for c-betting, I could consider donking. But he can put me on small pocket pairs when I call from the small blind, and that still makes it a somewhat reasonable board to c-bet. I can both call and 3-bet here. I think I'm gonna call, just play my position against him. The reason against calling would be the risk of getting squeezed, but because of the stack size of the fish I don't think that the regulars are gonna bluff squeeze very often there. Get check min raised. He probably has a hand that will snap call a shove, so I'm just gonna call, hope that I hit. If these are both actual short stackers, I should make this 5 probably. card doesn't really change anything. If he has ace queen, I'm still beat. If he has a weaker queen, I'm still good. If he has a set, I'm still beat. The flush actually got there, which is, he could have a flush, which sucks from me, and also I could have a flush, so he might not call again with a weak hand. But I still think I should bet at it. And probably fold to a check raise. And this is somewhat close. Yeah, I think I'm gonna check back now. And this, I'll just look him up to see if he has bad size tells. Alright. Because he raised, he already raised, and he probably had an overpair or something. That's a sign that he doesn't go for, he doesn't limp call with strong hands. He just raises them, and that kind of weakens his limping range. So I can discount some of the stronger aces from his range. And I get pot odds only need to be good there a quarter of the time, and I get reads. If I call, if I fold, I learn nothing. Here I'm gonna call because I have an ace in my hand. You can consider shoving on the board like this, but because I have an ace in my hand, that's a card. If I hit, he will barrel at it with worse for value and bluffs. Should probably have c-bet this to get him off his pairs. Really wet board. Multi-way, I'm just gonna fast play. The c-betting range here should be fairly strong. Probably doesn't c-bet, maybe c-bets a hand like queen 10, but that'd probably be one of the weakest hands that he's c-betting here. So against a range of stronger one pair hands and rolls, I'm in good shape. And that's just super ugly. Though I don't necessarily think that he has a flush here. He could easily have I guess 9x of diamonds, he can have that, and he can have a couple of straights. I think I still have to bet because he could have an overpair with the flush draw or so. And I don't think he check shoves a straight here, he just check calls. Which means that when he checks shoves, he probably has an overpair with the diamond, and I'd call it off. I should have limped with 3-6 here, because he's likely a loose passive fish and it will just let me see the flop for free. Alright, he has something on this board, so he's going nowhere. Alright. I have no history with the guy. 3-bets without history get more credit. So it's fine to 3-bet bluff with the blockers there. Now at higher stakes I might c-bet here. To make it look like you can be bluffing. I might also check air to make it look like I actually have something. But at these stakes I'll just check because I have something. That's a good card. Takes a couple of sets out of his range. And he's very unlikely to have a single jack in his preflop calling range. When he bets that small, it kind of looks like he's value betting an ace, trying to get me to call with kings and queens. Interesting. I think if he has an ace, he just bets again. So unless he's going for a check raise all in with the both, I have the best hand here. And in that case I'll just bet $5. Maybe he calls with pocket kings or something. Maybe he's a fish. His bet size on the turn equaled his hand strength, but he does have auto reload on. We'll see. Don't think I've 3-bet him before. And again I'll get credit. And this is a good 3-bet bluffing hand. This guy seems quite tight aggressive over the small sample, so a lot of his calling range on this flop will be second pair type hands that I can barrel against and have backdoor diamonds, can barrel an ace. Now here I'm gonna check because he probably folds the hands like pocket tens stuff now, and he could have king queen. I think if he has a flush draw he bets the turn. I'll just bet, I hope he calls it with ace queen or something, maybe pocket jacks, pocket tens. Here he's probably just giving up with air. So I'll bet 3 to either get called or bluff raised. Oh wow. So he really sucks at value. And now I've been somewhat aggro on this table, and that creates a really good spot to value 3-bet now. That's another upside of being aggressive early on in the session when your image is still clean. This is a somewhat questionable race because he has been playing pretty tight. So he might just be a tight passive player. There's no need to see bet large on these boards with whether it's for value or a bluff, because the pot is a little bit larger because it was a squeezed pot instead of a 3-bet pot against a single person. So you can still easily get stacks in on the later streets, so you don't really miss out on value. And in any spot where you can decrease your bet size without losing value, you usually should, because if you decrease your bet size, that means your bluffs become cheaper, and this is no limit hold'em and you never have anything, so you want to optimize your play for bluffs usually, not for value. If I had reads on him that he's aggro and that he likes calling squeezes with suited connectors and stuff, a player that I would label orange, then I would probably check the flop, because he has so much air in his range that he can just bet at it and very likely triple barrel off his stack. He donks spot. No reads on him at all. I have a pair, so I'm just gonna call. Could be value, could be a total bluff. Haven't seen many people, I haven't seen many regulars pot donk as a bluff. It's usually something like ace 10 or so. But it could be random overs on the flop. Got called by the same tight guy, so I'm gonna double barrel him for the same reasons. So now, if he was donking the flop for value, why did he check the turn? And if it's for pot control with something like a 7, why is he potting now when the flush hits? That makes no sense. This bet should be a bit polarized, and in that case, oh shit, I was gonna call. I can just bluff catch there. This is a great card to bet at because all the backdoor flush draws hit as well, which I can represent. Oh, I obviously meant to bet that. Yeah, you probably would have folded. And I fold pocket 9s under the gun. Sorry guys, I know stuff like that tilts you. So yeah, this is a really clear bet on the river. I can even have a gut shot, something like 6-7, which he can't. I can have a lot of flushes, which he can't. I can have an ace, which is somewhat unlikely for him. I can have sets. It's just a really good spot to fire the third barrel. Pretty much only get called by Jack X suited rivering the flush, Ace Jack, and slow played sets. Raising smaller because of the short stacker on the button. I'll go find a new table. Not much going on at the moment. I'll see if I can find an interesting hand to talk about. In the last video I had a botched attempt at recording it at first, so I deleted the footage, but there was an interesting hand in there. I'll try to find it. Right, so that hand, I think I had some sort of read on this guy. I think that he just check folds when he misses the flop or something. Not really sure what my read was. But I had a really good reason to call him with the Jack-3 suited. The 10-3 suited. So he checks, so I check back. If I had the c-bet, I would just have folded here because of that read. Turns the jack, goes check check again, and now he bets the river. So a player that isn't really bluffy, what does he have here? Well, I think if he had ace x, he wouldn't bet here because of the board being so ugly. And I can also take king x out of his range, because if he had a king in his hand, he would have probably bet at some point. Because king jack flopped an open ender, king queen will stop pair. Ace king has a gut shot, probably c bets. Otherwise I would have bet the turn because then it has the nuts. Also ace jack probably bets the turn. Yeah, there just aren't any hands really that he plays like this and then has a king on the river. So I ended up looking him up, putting on mostly under pairs to the 10, which he had pocket fives. This is interesting because we have seen him raise and then check min raise a flop. Maybe that was top 2, that he limp raises premiums and he just raised with 10-9 suited or something and then check min raised the top 2. Here I out of position floated because a check raise doesn't really represent much, but when it goes check check I can bet on the river and I can turn draws that I can then check raise bluff with. So now, do I value bet or do I check? I think I'll just go for a really small value bet, because normally if I bet here on the brick, he folds. So when I actually hit, it's it's hard to get value. And he just folded to a $3 bet, so I'll take a note on him that he Betting on the large side because I don't think they'll fold an ace. But they also won't bet an ace, so there's no point in checking. And this guy's 3-betting me quite aggressively. So I think I'll go for a 4-bet bluff. It could be that he's aware of his image and that he's only 3-betting me for value now. But yeah, it's one of the better hands that I can't call the 3-bet with. With king 10 suited or so, I could probably call it. No, ace x offsuit would be better, but king is still a good blocker. Can both call and 3-bet. Yeah, I'm gonna call. My image is quite aggro. Good board for me. Good board for my calling range, not necessarily good board for his raising range. No, this board misses 3-bettable hands, and I didn't 3-bet, so he still has all those 3-bettable hands in his raising range, but I don't have them in my calling range. So it's very easy for me to represent everything that the turn or the river brings. I'm gonna call here because the fish is in the pot. And it's suited and it's multi-way. Probably gonna check raise this because I can represent diamonds when I get called, and I can also barrel at clubs. That's a shame. Also the c-bet is pretty small. It could be a standard bet size, but when there's a fish in hand on the, I think he should be betting larger if he's value betting. So I'll note 10 into 17. Bluff c-bet. There was very likely a bet sizing tell that he had. Also this guy is either on mega tilt and spewing all over, or he's on the giant heater. I'm starting to think that he's actually tilting and full of shit. Here I'm just opening anything remotely playable from the cutoff because the player on the button is so tight. And the player in the small blind as well. And for the same reason I'll open ace-4 here just as a steal. It's a really weak hand, but the player's in position on me. All three of them are super tight, and then there's a fish in the big blind. So I can really open super wide at this table. Yeah, I'm not gonna get it in against the nit, so I'll just call. Hand is too strong to fold. And here I'm not gonna squeeze because I have a really aggro image on that table. He has been limp raising premiums, so I'm actually gonna 3-bet. You know, the one time I 3-bet before, I think he either called or shoved, I'm not sure. But I think his play has changed since I think he went on tilt. Ship hard sounds like a short stacker. Short stacker would have been great despite the position on me. I could still just have kept opening a ton. Short stackers at these stakes generally don't really adjust. He hasn't 3-bet me since that successful 4-bet bluff. So I think this is not very often a bluff now. I was just waiting for a hand, which is why I'll fold now. Even though I could 4-bet bluff or call even because we're somewhat deep and it was suited, but he just felt strong there. Oh yeah, this player. I played one hand against him in the last video too. He's a bit unusual, so that's unfortunate because I'll likely have to tighten up. My image is quite aggro, but he is opening quite wide from the earlier positions. So I'll just go ahead and 3-bet him anyway, making it slightly larger there because of stack sizes. Oh, what the hell. Let's see if I can get 4 out of 4. Three out of 4, not bad. This was too large, I meant I should have made it 6. This guy's a full tilted red pro, so he's probably a nit mass stapling with his insane rakeback deal. So I'll just treat him like he's 18 VPIP or so, despite never having played with him before. Which is why I opened the king 7 there, because there's a nit on the button and a very likely nit in the big blind, so I can steal white. Definitely for betting, because this is a guy that hates folding. I'll even go a little bit on the larger side, because I think he's very likely to flat it out of position. There you go. Could probably even have gone larger. I have blockers to king queen, and I think that he shoves with ace king. But I don't have blockers to ace jack, so I'm actually gonna c-bet for value, as he's more likely to have a jack than the king, and he could also make some sort of spew. Alright, that's just unfortunate. I don't really have any great backdoor outs, but it's just a really good board to float. He doesn't hit it very often with his cut of raising range, and I can still represent a lot of cards on the turn. Now I can go for the bet once, and then I bet pretty small and give up on the river, or I can go for the bomb, and then I can bet river 2. I think I'll go for the latter, because he might be check calling here with the hand like pocket tens. And I'll probably be able to blast him off it on the river, on a good number of cards. That's a very small bet. Probably an overpair, but I don't think he will fold. I am gonna call because if the river's a club and he checks, I can still win the pot. And the queen is of course an out. He might actually be a fish and not fold an overpair even if the flush completes on the river. So he should probably have folded turn there. This guy's in the big blind, but I'll be in position, so I'll just open wide. I can check here to represent showdown value, but I think there's a reasonable chance that he just takes a stab at it with his air. So I rather bet. Short stacker called my under the gun raise. They're very often set mining when they do that, so there's no point in c-betting for value here. Either has a set or he doesn't. Definitely leading here, don't want it to check through. It's not a good board for him to c-bet when he has air. I jam here because there are a lot of pair plus draws that he can have that probably won't fold. 7-9, not flush draws. And here I was considering leading and actually checked back. So yeah, I was considering value betting the river there, but the problem is when I check call the flop as the pre-flop raiser and then bet the river, I can't represent the bluff, so it's impossible to get called by a bluff catcher. But he could be, he's a short stacker, he's probably sucks at hand reading, so I should probably have gone for the bet anyway. Here I'm gonna make a small raise because I can represent various turn cards and he's c-betting a lot. And the problem is that this flop does hit all the broadways that he's raising, but he's either his c-betting range is extremely polarized and air heavy, or he's c-betting with second pair type hands. And in that case I'll get less 3-bets and more calls, and then I have fold equity with my barrels. Some people start spazzing and will never fold when you make a small raise there. So kind of to figure out what type of player he is. Alright, I will finish up the orbits. I'll actually play one more orbit on this table because everyone's so tight. Most of the hands will enter pre-flop. It will be pretty fast. Just gonna call once here. I have really poor equity against flush draws. Could also have sets, but it could also have like king queen or something that is just check raising once with and then giving up. This is a really small 3-bet. But I am out of position and readless, and he does seem tight. It's probably not a bluff but a value 3-bet. Yeah, he's probably gonna play his hand pretty face up post flop, so I'll just take the good pot odds and call, get in the spot. There was probably a slightly negative EV call, but you know, for the video it's fine. Again folding because he's in the big blind. If it was another like 21 VPIP tag, I would probably open it. Just waiting for the final hand. Aces one time. I'll play it just because it's the last hand. So he check raises bottom pair and just barrels. Alright, that was it. Alright, these are the last two sessions that I played, because in last video I didn't have time to briefly go over the results. Didn't run too hot. Here's some more stats. 37 VPIP roughly, opening a ton, especially in the steel positions. And yeah, high folded 3-bet, but that makes sense. The only reason I'm opening so much is because people are straightforward. and just give up. And when they do 3-bet, they generally have a strong hand against people who are defending their blinds better. I'm also not stealing a lot and folding less to their 3-bets as a result. So this is, in theory, this is exploitable. But as soon as someone starts exploiting it, I'll immediately adjust to it. So it's not a big deal. Actually didn't win in non-showdown. Probably just variance. And there's one hand I wanted to talk about. It was this hand with 10-7 suited. Cut of raises, I call, get overcalled from the small blind. He c-bets, I raise, and he calls. So far it's pretty standard. And here on the turn, I think most of you would be checking back here, because the 8 is a bad card, and I was value raising the flop. But the thing is, I can, if he has an overpair with a diamond, he still has equity. If he has like queens with the queen of diamonds, I don't really want to give him a free card. And if he has a hand like pocket 8s or jack 10, he has me beat, but if I double barrel here, I will be able to bluff him off it. So even though I was raising the flop for value on the turn, I think it's good to turn my hand into a bluff, get protection and fold out better hands at the same time. I think if he had a really strong flush draw, there's a reasonable chance that he just gets it in on the flop. If he has like queen jack of diamonds or something, a lot of people just get it in on the flop, and when they call, it's most likely a pair, an overpair, or something like jack 10, pair plus draw. And if they had ace jack of diamonds or so, ace 8 of diamonds, they very often just get it in on the flop. So I can discount flushes a little bit from his range, and as a result, if he check shoves here, I think it's more likely to be an overpair that just really doesn't want to fold, like queens with the queen of diamonds or aces with the ace of diamonds. And I'll probably call it off, but it is somewhat close. I'd prefer some sort of read to as of whether he actually check shoves. No, the read I need is how he plays his flush draws. If he just calls them on the flop, then he might be check shoving the turn here, and then my call obviously becomes a mistake. But I think when I'm readless on a guy, given the assumptions that I have that he will get it in with most flush draws and on the flop, and his turn check shoves will likely be over pairs with the diamond as a result, and I should probably call it off with the pot odds I'm getting. So yeah, I think that was one of the more interesting hands from the session. Alright, let me know if you have any more questions about anything. I'll gladly answer, and I'll see you guys next week.